1988 gave rock one of its defining chapters. From soaring ballads to full-throttle anthems, these tracks captured a year we'll always remember. Here are 15 songs that lit up the airwaves, shaped a generation, and still land with force today. Number 15, Sweet Child O' Mine, Guns N' Roses. Here's the story everyone gets wrong. The riff that opens this song was not a warm-up exercise. Slash himself formally set the record straight in 2022. It wasn't a warm-up exercise. I was sitting around the house where Guns used to live at one point in '86, and I just came up with this riff. Somebody else said it was a warm-up, and it just became one of those things. It happened at the band's communal house in the Griffith Park area of Los Angeles.
Where do we go?
Rhythm guitarist Izzy Stradlin heard it, asked Slash to play it again, came up with some chords, Duff McKagan created a bass line, and drummer Steven Adler planned a beat. Axl Rose was upstairs in his room listening.
I'd probably break down and cry.
The lyrics he wrote were drawn from a poem he'd been working on for his then-girlfriend, Erin Everly, daughter of Don Everly of the Everly Brothers. The band recorded it at Rumbo Recorders in Los Angeles with producer Mike Klink. By June 1988, it was on every radio dial. By September, it had topped the U.S. Billboard Hot 100, becoming the band's only U.S. #1 single. Appetite for Destruction, their debut album, had been out for over a year and had been slowly building momentum. Sweet Child O' Mine kicked the door wide open. One Pick Scrape in 1988 returns. That chorus still moves like a signal you recognize before you can name it.
Just like every cowboy.
Number 14, Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Poison a late-night phone call landed hard. Lines spilled onto a scrap of paper while the dryers turned and the room hummed.
Just like every cowboy.
Frontman Bret Michaels wrote this in a laundromat on the road after calling home and hearing something in his girlfriend's voice he couldn't unhear.
Come out right, though I tried not to hurt you.
That spur-of-the-moment confession moved from notebook to studio schedule, and then to request lines that never cooled.
Cuts me like a knife, I guess every road.
Recorded at Conway Recording Studios in Los Angeles with producer Tom Werman for the album Open Up and Say. The track kept the arrangement deliberately spare.
Rose has its thorn.
Acoustic foundation, clean electric swells, and a vocal aimed straight at the center.
Has its thorn. Just like
Released in October 1988, it rose to 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 by Christmas week.
Rose has its thorn.
And settled into wedding set lists and late-night dedications where it has remained ever since.
Somebody new, and that I never meant that much.
Hear it now, and the year returns like a postcard. Creased corners, ink smudge, a promise you can still read. Number 13, Love Bites Def Leppard by early September 1988. Weekend countdowns crowned a new #1, and slow dances found their anthem. In the studio, producer Robert John Mutt Lang walked in with a title and a skeleton that the band reshaped during the long Hysteria sessions in Dublin in the Netherlands. Stacked harmonies rose take by take, clean guitars interlocked. And Rick Allen, the drummer who had lost his left arm in a New Year's Day car crash in 1984 and rebuilt himself behind a custom electronic kit, held the center with a crisp precision that had no business being that controlled. His presence on this track isn't just remarkable for the circumstances, it's remarkable full stop. The arrangement left air for the hook to land and stay there. Love Bites became Def Leppard's only US 1 singles, which surprises people every time. One bar in and the year snaps back. floor varnish and hairspray in the air, a mirror ball scattering borrowed stars across the ceiling. Number 12, Bad Medicine, Bon Jovi, Little Mountain Sound Studios in Vancouver buzzed the day the chorus snapped into place. Desmond Child sat in with John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora to co-write. Producer Bruce Fairbairn steered the session, and engineer Bob Rock worked the board until the hook felt stadium ready. Mercury wanted a lead single that moved right away. The fall release hit radio with intent and climbed through October. By November 1988, it was sitting at 1, and Friday night countdowns treated it like the week's green light. In the room, the parts locked quickly. Chant-friendly backing vocals, a crisp 4 on the floor, and guitars stacked to lift the refrain. The video handed camcorders to fans and turned a performance into a rush of faces, which kept MTV looping it all season. Let the counting crack and you can feel confetti underfoot, a paper wristband against your skin, and a stadium of voices firing the refrain together.
That's the way it is. He says body's too old for working. His body's too young.
Number 11, Fast Car. Tracy Chapman here is one of 1988's greatest stories, and it almost didn't happen.
Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove.
Tracy Chapman had been playing folk clubs to small crowds. Her debut album, produced by David Kirschenbaum for Elektra Records, had been out 2 months when she was invited to perform.
Speed so fast, I felt like I was drunk. City lights day out before.
At the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute concert at Wembley Stadium on June 11, 1988. She played a 3-song afternoon set and was sent back to the dressing room.
We go cruise and entertain ourselves, still ain't got a job.
Then, as Stevie Wonder was walking up the ramp to take the stage in the primetime slot, a computer disc containing his keyboard sounds had gone missing.
I had a feeling that I belonged.
Wonder ran back down in tears. The show organizers needed someone, anyone, to fill the slot immediately. Chapman, who had already played once, was called 3 times and kept being sent back before it finally happened.
When we were driving in your car, speed so fast, I felt like I was.
They didn't have a slot for me and I kept waiting, and then they just kind of shoved me out there, she said. I didn't have time to be nervous. Armed with nothing but her guitar, she performed Fast Car before an audience of 80,000 at Wembley and an estimated 600 million television viewers worldwide. Before the concert, she had sold roughly 250,000 albums. In the 2 weeks following, she sold over 2 million. The song peaked at Has 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. By midsummer, it sat inside the US Top 10. One listen and the dashboard becomes a notebook, headlights tracing the outline of the life you meant to build. Number 10, Cult of Personality. Living Color Club crowds and college stations picked up a 3-word chant from a New York quartet. MTV rotated the bright suits and newsreel faces, and by back-to-school season, the chorus was carrying through gyms, skate shops, and festival fields. In the studio, producer Ed Stasium pushed for economy, hook first, rhythm locked, vocal up front. Guitarist Vernon Reid drove the riff with a technical ferocity that stood entirely apart from anything else on rock radio in 1988. Vocalist Corey Glover commanded center stage while Will Calhoun and Muzz Skillings pinned the groove tight. The video stitched historic figures Malcolm X, JFK, Hitler, Martin Luther King into the frame and gave the message a face. The song won Living Color the Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance in 1990, but the first impact belongs to packed nights and wall-to-wall radio, a title that draws an answer the moment you speak it. Number 9, Desire U2 All playlist shifted when a lean new single announced the next chapter. Released on September 19, 1988, as the lead single from Rattle and Hum, Desire, was built on a Bo Diddley beat, a rhythm The Edge said was also influenced by the Stooges' 1969 track 1969. Here's the production story. U2 originally recorded it at STS Studios in Dublin as a demo. They re-recorded it at A&M Studios in Los Angeles, where it sounded tighter and more accurate. But, as The Edge said, it lacked feel. So they abandoned the re-recording and went back to the original Dublin demo. 2 minutes and 58 seconds of dirty, electric rawness that they could have polished but chose not to.
She's a candle burning in my room.
Producer Jimmy Iovine kept the arrangement spare and direct. The song became U2's first #1 single on the UK singles chart and also topped the Modern Rock Tracks and Mainstream Rock Tracks charts simultaneously, the first song ever to do both at once. It peaked at 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and won the Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a duo or group with vocal. One snare crack and a surge to the rail. The chant rolling like a drumline down the hall. Number 8. The Flame Cheap Trick Epic Records slid a cassette across the desk. A new ballad from British songwriters Bob Mitchell and Nick Graham. The band took the assignment into the studio, and radio soon had a fresh, slow dance in heavy rotation. Producer Richie Zito centered the track on Robin Zander's clear, open vocal, layered guitars that rise in waves, and a rhythm section that keeps the pulse unhurried. The video's candlelit stage and long camera moves fit the late-night mood perfectly on MTV. Release timing did the rest. Spring radio dates, steady phone requests, and a chart climb that reached 1 in July 1988. Cheap Trick's first and only US chart topper. 2 notes in and you can smell warm candle wax and punch bowl. Folding chairs begin to scrape the floor, and a photo booth strips curls in a jacket pocket as the last sway refuses to end.
Now it's 1:45. I know I'm hanging, but
Number 7. I Hate Myself for Loving You. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts' Midsummer Airwaves turned drive time into a sing-along as this blunt title jumped from jukeboxes to afternoon playlists.
without you, but I've been dreaming about
The lead single from Up Your Alley moved through pep rallies, bar rooms, and TV bumpers, and by August was sitting inside the US top 10. Sessions at the Hit Factory in New York kept the edges sharp under producers Desmond Child and Kenny Laguna. The track carries snarl for the bleachers and polish for the countdowns.
say forget it just for spite. I think of you.
2 bars light the memory. Neon on wet pavement, a cracked diner booth at closing time, and a chorus that lands like a fist on the table.
Every single one of us, the devil inside, devil inside.
Number 6, Devil Inside INXS Boardwalk, Neon, and Fast Cuts turned a 3-minute clip into appointment viewing on MTV.
Every single one of us, the devil inside, the devil inside.
Spring playlists folded the single into drive time and club nights, and weekend crowds were echoing the title before the first verse landed.
Devil inside, every single one of us, the devil inside.
The record grew out of sessions with producer Chris Thomas, tracked at Rhinoceros Studios in Sydney, and finished at Studio de la Grande Armée in Paris.
Flesh on the minds. Well,
Guitarist Andrew Ferris brought in a taut groove. The arrangement stayed lean, and Michael Hutchence rode the pocket with a vocal built to carry across any room he walked into.
hell. Please God help.
Released in February 1988, it climbed to Beast 2 on the Billboard Hot 100.
One of us, the devil inside, devil inside, devil inside.
Hit the first downbeat and you can taste ocean spray, feel joystick calluses from the arcade, and watch the chorus ripple along the pier like neon stitched to the surf. Number 5, Where's My Mind? Pixies college dorm stereos in 1988 turned a deep cut into a secret handshake. The idea came from Black Francis Charles Thompson during his time at the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Where is my mind?
Where is my mind?
He was snorkeling in Puerto Rico and had a tiny fish persistently chasing him. He didn't know why. I don't know too much about fish behavior, he later said. That image, disoriented, curious, a little haunted, became the emotional core of the song. Producer Steve Albini tracked it during the Surfer Rosa sessions in late 1987. To obtain the song's distinctive ambience on Kim Deal's backing vocals, Albini moved the equipment into a tiled bathroom at Q Division Studios in Boston. And recorded her ooh parts there to capture natural echo, a technique that gave the track its unmistakable halo. The song was never released as a single. It traveled entirely by word of mouth, mixtape to roommate to weekend drive. Years later, it would echo through movie theaters when Fight Club 1999 used it to close its final scene.
Where is my mind?
But the bond started here, in late nights and open windows. A note scribbled in a campus notebook and kept forever. Number 4, Jane says. Jane's Addiction record shop windows turned heads first. The album's cover stirred controversy, and curious listeners carried that image straight to campus apartments and late-night hangouts. MTV's 120 Minutes slipped the track between underground favorites, and word of mouth did the rest. In the studio, producer Dave Jordan kept the frame unadorned at El Dorado and Track Record Studios in Los Angeles, letting the song breathe on 2 steady chords. Perry Farrell drew the character of Jane Bainter from real life. She was a woman he had known in the East Hollywood scene, a figure of raw, unfiltered urban survival. Eric Avery's pulse set the ground, and Stephen Perkins' steel drum colors lifted the edges without crowding the room. Issued in 1988, it settled onto college playlists and into sets where crowds kept time on the rail. A few opening bars and the city comes back. Beads clicking in a doorway, warm air in the alley, voices drifting up a staircase. Number 3, Under the Milky Way, The Church After Midnight, radio found a companion for empty streets and drifting headlights. College stations saved it for the quiet shift, when coffee steamed on the console and callers asked for something that suited the mood. Cut in Los Angeles during the Starfish sessions with producers Waddy Wachtel and Greg Ladagny, the single arrived on February 15, 1988. A mid-song figure played on a Fender Jazzmaster through an EBO gave the track its unmistakable halo, shimmering and still like a held breath. It reached 24 on the Billboard Hot 100 and later earned ARIA Single of the Year in Australia. It lived in the small hours, a soundtrack for drives that wandered on purpose. Let that EBO line linger and midnight opens wide.
Got somebody to leave.
Number 2, Handle with Care, Traveling Wilburys, a last-minute hunt for a B-side brought 5 heavyweights to a garage and a supergroup took its first breath. The 5, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, and Jeff Lynne. Harrison needed a B-side for a European single. He called on his friends.
Got somebody to leave.
They gathered at Dave Stewart's home studio in Los Angeles on April 5, 1988.
And dream on.
Harrison spotted a box in the garage labeled Handle with Care. It became the title. They wrote the song that afternoon. They had so much material that it became the entire album instead. The spark literally sat on a cardboard box. Titles sometimes choose the writer. Released in mid-October 1988, it nudged the Hot 100, hit East 2 on the album rock chart, and climbed into the top 5 in Australia and New Zealand.
I've been uptight and made a mess.
Let the first chord tumble, and you can almost smell tape glue and sawdust in that garage. 5 voices trading verses like friends passing a story around a table, while the Pacific murmured just beyond the cracked door.
Got my spine, I've got my orange crush.
Number 1, Orange Crush R.E.M. Studio lights stayed low at Ardent Studios in Memphis while takes clicked by and the track found its shape. Producer Scott Litt kept the room focused, and the band leaned into a leaner, harder edge than anything in their previous catalog. This was R.E.M's major label debut, their first release on Warner Brothers, and it needed to announce a new chapter with unmistakable clarity. Orange Crush did exactly that. The song is about Agent Orange, the defoliant used during the Vietnam War. Written from the perspective of a soldier, its title referring directly to the chemical's nickname. Urgent, disciplined, built to carry across campus lawns and late-night radio blocks. The video's stark black and white, frames, drill fields, and helmeted silhouettes matched the song's steady cadence perfectly. College stations put it in heavy rotation. Modern rock playlists gave it a lane. On stage, a bullhorn heightened the message, while the rhythm section kept the march unbroken. 2 snares hits, and the room sharpens.
My spine, I've got my orange crush.
Rain ticking on the sill, the low hum of a CRT, and a bullhorn phrase cutting the air like a warning flare. 1988 in one track. A chapter in rock history that sounds as alive today as it did when these songs first hit the airwaves. Which one was yours? Which 1988 song should have made this list? Drop it in the comments. We read everyone. Subscribe if you enjoyed the deep dive. See you on the next one.